Riccardo Valenti. So Riccardo Valenti holds a PhD in philosophy from Foscari University in Venice and Paris 1. He graduated from the Universities of Florence and Trento. His former research focused on the philosophies of Bergson and Merleau-Ponty, to which he has devoted numerous articles and lectures. His interests include phenomenology, philosophy of technology, and environmental ethics. And currently he's working on a phenomenologically grounded theory of intergenerational agency. And his talk is entitled When Physics Became Bergsonian, Merleau-Ponty Reader of Bergson. Right, the floor is yours, same idea. So you've got less than 45 minutes, but it's up to you how you split it between the talk and the Q&A.
Yeah, hi Matyáš, hi everyone. Could you hear me properly?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the kind words and for the warm welcome. I will share my presentation if I can. So here. Okay. Can you see my presentation?
Yeah,
Okay.
all good.
Okay, thank you. This is the first page. So as you said, this is part of a bigger project that I have in mind, and I'm working actually at my with my postdoc project. And I thank you for accepting my proposal. This gives me the chance and the opportunity to retrieve some Bergsonian traits of my previous formation. In fact, I dedicated my master thesis on Bergson and the concept of causality, and especially in the second, third, and fourth chapter of creative evolutions. And then I switched to Merleau-Ponty. I mean, when I started my PhD, and my former idea of research was to trying to establish a contact between the two proposals, between the two philosophers, and working on the theme of passivity. Unfortunately, I did not really succeed in this, and then I fully dedicated myself to phenomenology and to Merleau-Ponty. I had trouble in trying to mix the two vocabularies between the two philosophers and the two different approaches. So the point is, I would like to try again today and to start a new research line, and with your help, maybe this could be possible and achievable in the coming times. So for today, my main themes and the expected outcomes that I would like to develop are mainly focused on the theme of intersubjectivity. So how do we attain the knowledge of the others? How do we perceive others that are present? They have a body as I do, and they think in a certain sense as I do. Something that is also retrievable, for instance, in the fifth Cartesian meditation, which I will like to indulge in the coming slides a little bit, in order to show how this theme is 100% Bergsonian, but it also resonates with the phenomenological background and vocabulary, as Professor Kapek argued before. And I would like to argue that duration, so the theme of durée, could be considered as a lingua franca, so a common language, both in Bergson, of course, which is the main theorist, author of duration, and along with Merleau-Ponty's vocabulary. And I will try to defend this position, mainly indulging in the text of Bergson in the Making, Bergson se faisant, this homage paid by Merleau-Ponty in 1959, so 100 years after Henri Bergson's birth. And I will not consider today the course from 1948, and has been published, I think, in French edition in 1978, which is an academic course at Collège de France in which Bergson discusses the union of the body of the soul in Bergson, Malebranche, and Mendelbiran. I will mainly concentrate in Bergson in the Making, but just for a reason of times, and I found it more reasonable to focus on this text the most. I will later focus on some general consideration about the strange relationship that Merleau-Ponty and Bergson entertain, and how, in my opinion, Merleau-Ponty is not 100% fair with Bergson slightly preferring the Husserlian and and phenomenological background in order to build himself a theoretical framework. And then I would like to focus on some elements of Bergsonism here, and I'm directly quoting Deleuze, which is equally present in Merleau-Ponty's original proposal. And I'm merely focusing here in some working notes of the visible and invisible, and the course on the word of expression, sensible word and the word of expression, which has been translated in 2020. And my idea is that this kind of conversion, this kind of relationship may be understood in terms of physics. And I'm not here proposing some, Einsteinian theory of relativity, but you know that Bergson had an argument with Einstein in 1922 because they both misinterpreted their inner, let's say, interpretation of relativity as the different points of their server and how these different fields of observation may interrelate. So I would like to hold for an apologetic vision also this kind of debates. So as I argued, as I told you before, I think the inner core of the questions of these relationships is how do we understand the term of duration? And I'm merely quoting here some of the quotations that Merleau-Ponty dedicated to Bergson in Bergsonian the Making. So, for instance, the fact that, according to Bergson, he says, I am the duration I grasp and time is duration grasped in me. And he spoke in terms of inherence. So inherence, the fact that is something that I do not feel like an object. I don't perceive duration as something that is exterior, but it's something that is equally interior and exterior, and it grants this kind of union between the different dimensions of subject and object, which should not be understood as something as an opposition, as it is in the idealistic vocabulary. So you can appreciate a sort of non-coincidence, and experience, according to this non-coincidence or inherence, is susceptible to being extended beyond a particular being I am. You can already see this kind of link which unifies every subject in a sort of field, and I'm gonna try to define how this field may be interpreted. And this happens according to a contraction of perception. And you must hold in mind here the matter and memory vocabulary about the subtraction of perception, which is something that elicits the fact of perceiving, the fact of being conscious of something that will permit grasping another being, not by adhesion, but by contraction of its rhythm. And once again, I would like you to consider this choice of terms. So inherence, non-coincidence, adhesion, it's something that is more intimate than just the observance, just the fact of see something on my standpoint. In order to grasp this kind of contraction and rhythm, you have to operate a choice among an infinite of possible durées, so something that is made of the same nature and it's not 100% stranger, and appreciate a kind of complicity, an oblique and clandestine relationship with object and other subject. It's like an absolute that is an us, according to this Merleau-Ponty's restitution. And I'm here quoting from The Praise of Philosophy. So the fact that this idea of absolute knowledge, and we have to agree that knowledge is not the once again subject-object relations knowledge, is something that is an us, is something that is deeper than just an barely aesthetic appreciation. So we're nothing but structure, we're nothing but a certain way of enduring, and when we appreciate this kind of understanding, we feel that something responds to our duration. So the fact that everything is made of these durations, and we can all relate according to this fact of enduring. And when I do that, I form the idea of others by borrowing from my relation with things, which is something that I think is deeply Husserlian. Husserl in the fifth meditation, Cartesian meditation, often employs this locution. So if I were there, if you were there, so the fact that this the places are like interchangeable, and this is the key of the comprehension by analogy. The fact that I can grasp the others only by occupying situation within my work, in a certain sense, wearing their shoes, we could argue. This is a quotation from the course on nature. So Bergsonian reduction shows that duration is an apprenticeship and a general way of seeing suspecia durationes. So this is the key lesson we should keep of this Bergsonian legacy, which is something that I think Merleau-Ponty retrieves. So I'm focusing now on duration and simultaneity, which is the main text that Merleau-Ponty is considering in this homage, which is a document coming from 1922. According to which perception is defined on temporal basis. So perception presents things in the same line of the present, according to many solitary durations. I think we should hold in mind that perception here is something of shared ability we all hold, but we have to understand how we can unify this perception in order to restitute that bigger us, the absolute that I introduced earlier. So when in solitary duration, there is simply perceived simultaneity, not only of two events in the same fields, but even between all perceptual fields, all observers, and all durations. This understanding can help us appreciate a unified whole, so a temporal universe, a universe made of duration, where everything relates. The restitution of all duration is achieved, so it's something that is not immediate in a certain sense. I mean, it's immediate, but we have to understand how this immediacy comes from. When incarnate subjects mutually perceive one another, so the fact that we are like mirrored in our different perception, our different performance activity. So when our fields, let's say, cut across and develop one another, sort of encroachment, and we see one another in the process of perceiving the same work, we are like partners in this bigger venture. So perception in its order is a total act that posits a universal duration. So the idea that this unified whole, this all duration are of the same kind, like formulas which enable us to pass from one system to one another, like physics form a whole, like this idea of interconnection, I think, is here underlined. I won't linger on the idea of libidinal body and intercorporeity, which is presented by Merleau-Ponty and in nature and the word of expression and the sensible word and the word of expression, but it kind of resonates this idea of interconnection of many elements in different fields. So according to Merleau-Ponty, when this was formed and when this idea was actually formulated, physics became Bergsonian, of course, philosophical physics, and intersubjectivity and this idea of coexistence of the words, which was highlighted, was given by physics. So by this sort of physical laws that you could elaborate by reading Bergson, and I think Bergson had in mind while writing his text. What is lacking, according to Merleau-Ponty and Bergson, is the idea of true sociology. So the fact that these physical ideas did not have a sheer development into something more concrete and something more useful for a phenomenologically informed author as he was. And I think that's the distance, I mean, the gap between the two authors. Although Bergson was not, I think, 100% interested in kind of debate that Merleau-Ponty would have later developed. So just to, this relates to the second point of my overview, so the strange relationship these two authors had. As I told you before, I do not think that Merleau-Ponty has been 100% fair with Bergson. He kind of acknowledges him the fact that he had some great intuitions, and intuition is, of course, a key term in order to understand Bergson corpus. But, I mean, according to Merleau-Ponty, Bergson defined consciousness as knowledge of the self and corresponding actions. So to us, static idea of knowledge, which, of course, Merleau-Ponty disavows. I mean, it does not accept this, but I think that Bergson does not accept this either. And according to Merleau-Ponty in intuition, and I'm quoting here from Phenomenology of Perception, some passages, some quotation where Merleau-Ponty discusses Bergson's main passages, main theory. Subject and object are like mingled, so there's not a sheer differentiation between subject and object, which is something that is not tenable according to a phenomenological vocabulary. And knowledge is formed by an act of coinciding, and this act of coinciding elicits a form of intuition, a form of fusion, which is lonely, blind, and mute life. And this is really heavy. I mean, this is hard to accept for us, for a Bergsonian, but I think this lecture is more instrumental than actually attentive. According to the medium of time, that consciousness remains knowledge and time remains successive now. So his Merleau-Ponty was not at first 100% with Bergson interpretation of time flowing, slightly preferring, as I told you before, the Husserlian interpretation, as it is apparent in the chapter dedicated to time in Phenomenology of Perception, and slightly preferring Husserl Phenomenology of Internal Time Consciousness. And Bergson, I mean, you have this box media here. Bergson was wrong in explaining the unity of time in terms of its continuity, but right to stick the continuity of time as an essential phenomenon. Once again, he had this great intuition, but did not develop it further. And I switch now to the positive, let's say positive aspect that Merleau-Ponty acknowledges in Bergson's reading. So the fact that perception is somehow related to subtraction and not the sheer perceiving of things as things. I mean, a definite object with no pretension and retention, quoting here from Husserl. So the fact that you have these virtual regions and this hollow where things are starting from which the things exist, yes, or sort of register. So the fact that perception is something bigger than the definite acts of perception itself, and this is related to the particular controversy that Merleau-Ponty had in this time with idealist philosophers such as Alquier and La Chesseray. And I conclude this slide with this brilliant quotation from the Visible and Invisible. So the effect of body extension to the stars. This is a quotation from the two sources. Forming a segment of durable flesh of the world pregnant with many other visions besides my own. Yet this idea of extension of perception, which is not solely limited by the once again the physiological and physical limits of the subject. So I'm here introducing the term of fields. So what we should interpret as field, and I'm mainly focusing on a two quotation from Dialogue and Perception of the Other, which is the last chapter of the unfinished work, The Prose of the Word. So how do we, the fact that the others are present in our field of perception, and the fact that others have fields the same way we have, so the fact that we encroach our fields and we perceive one another pertaining to the fields. So others are internal to my field and to my world, and thus they are altogether a variation of that fundamental relations that I have with my own fields and the thing that I perceive. And one field, according to the very definition of field, does not exclude another the way an act of absolute consciousness, and this is a reference to the polemy I referred before. Rather, a field tends to itself to multiply because it is the opening, and this is a crucial term for Merleau-Ponty, which as a body I am exposed to the world. The exposure is also crucial. It does not have, the field, once again, the absolute density of a pure consciousness, which makes every other consciousness an impossibility for it. And this is a key term for understanding altogether the intersubjectivity, so the fact of the other's existence, which is a crucial problem from transcendental idealism, according to Merleau-Ponty. This means that there will not be others or other minds for me if I did not have a body. So the body is crucial in order to understand this coexistence. And if they had no body through which they slip into my field, they slip once again. They do not have rigid barriers here, multiplying from within, and seeming to me prey. This is brilliant. I mean, prey to the same word, and seeming to oriented to the same word as I do. And this is also present in the visible and the invisible, the idea of single vision, which is composed by many different visions. So the fact that vision is something that is bigger and is superior than the multiple vision, yet composing it. And I'm not focusing. I mean, I think this is the same. The last slide I prepared to other self and the human world, which is a chapter from the phenomenology of perception, in order to give you a little glimpse of this controversy and this ambiguity that is retrievable, I think, in Merleau-Ponty interpretation of Bergson. According to this text, this quotation, the perspective are brought together in one single word in which we both participate as anonymous subject of perception. So, as the idea of the single vision, you have this impression of perception, which as an act, as an action, which is very liminal, which is very primordial, is bigger, is more important, is antecedent to every different subject that perform acts of perception that are like subtractions of the invisible whole, as it is apparent by reading the matter and memory, for instance, as body of centers of actions of yet composing, I mean, the whole body of actions. My body discovers in that of the other body a miraculous prolongation of my intention, a familiar way of dealing with the world, and I think this resonates with the idea of fields, as it is for body schematism, for instance. It does not arrest, it does not come to an end when my body finish, in a certain sense, when I am done with my action. Everything as a reaction, in a certain sense. In this idea of universal physics, everything is based and composed on, is based on action and reactions. And in the visible and the invisible, Merleau-Ponty speaks of transitivism, which is, in quoting Bergson's, and the fact that others, I mean, this is not really, he says, like, masculinity implies femininity. I mean, this is not ideal, but he wanted to suggest that things are, the others are as intimate and as co-present as it is the idea of masculinity and femininity. So the fact of unity, of recomposing unity that you meet in mating, for instance. And I finally quote this. I think those are the course note of institution and passivity, according to which others forms a system. So a system dismayed, made of prolongations, made of encroachments, as it is for fields. And I think this interpretation is coherent with that of Alsage's, Morris, and Toadvine, and modern interpreters that are concerned with this interpretation of Merleau-Ponty Bergson, in a certain sense, and how can we retrieve, how can we collect these lessons without being too hard on Bergson for just choosing different words, maybe for explaining the same concept. So refusing the idea of a subject, of an absolute consciousness, which is something that Merleau-Ponty wanted to do as well, but was like prevented to do so for his starting. So the structure of the behavior, the phenomenology of perception. I mean, this encounter was delayed, I think, but not prevented, in a certain sense. Those are the texts I employed for these presentations, and yeah, thank you for your time. I'm done with my slides, and I'll wait for your impression and questions about this presentation. Thank you.
Right, fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you, Riccardo. Great. Any questions? Just raise your hand, please. Right, Jakub has a question.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Great. Yeah, I very much liked the your capacity to show parts of Bergson reception in Merleau-Ponty where Merleau-Ponty wasn't completely fair or just. It's much more. It's a complex issue, and it's great to see how many faces it has. So my question is very simple, just related to the concept of perspective. Surprisingly, you ended up on intersubjective. Well, a huge part of the talk, some part of the talk was intersubjectivity. And so how far would you go when reading Merleau-Ponty on Bergson in direction of this fusion, this anonymous loss of unique perspective? Yeah, that's the question. Because, yeah, just one point to add up. We can take one reading of Merleau-Ponty in this debate is to say that he has thinks in terms of polarity, where one extreme point of this polarity is this anonymity. The other is the unique perspective of ego, and that he, talking about the concrete subject, he tries to define it by two extremities. This fusion, anonymity being one extremity that actually doesn't exist in itself, but there are other types of reading where Merleau-Ponty is, especially the late one, is this philosopher of fusion, which then again can have some Bergsonian echoes. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Great. I think that, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of late Merleau-Ponty. I find it really controversial, hard to read. I think that Merleau-Ponty remains stuck between the two main authors that I think influenced him the most, which are, I think, Bergson and Husserl. And it's curious that I think they both were born in 1859. I mean, so he has these two axes, and I think that he stresses both and kind of make them say more than they actually would. And this equally applies to Husserl's, for instance, idea of the deep past of depth, which you can find in the last working notes of the visible and the invisible. So fusion, you mentioned fusion. The idea of perspective reminds me in Bergson of Plotinus. And so the fact that you have this primal diffraction between many voices, between many speech, between many stares, which are part of a bigger stair with a capital S, if you want, if you allow me to say so. And the fact is, Merleau-Ponty employed and started with a phenomenological background, and he wanted to answer the same answers, the same questions that Bergson asked himself when he thought about the origin of experience. I mean, how experience is conceivable, is understandable, how we can speak of experience in terms of without avoiding any reference to a sort of Kantian or neo-Kantian subject. So the fact that I do not form the word is not a product of my thought. How can I conceive others, I mean, as partners, let's say, in this venture? And the notion of perspective, I think, is ideal in order to, it's also a bit like Leibnizian, I think, the idea of the window, the fact that we are open windows, we are windows wide open in a certain sense, or in Deleuzian terms, we could think of an edifice without windows, at all, in a certain sense. And the idea of fusion, of the anonymity, is a controversial one, because in order to experience something and to also to report the fact of experiencing something, you have to emerge from this anonymity. So to give yourself a name, in a certain sense, and to emerge from this dream, which is something that I think Merleau-Ponty also retrieves from his lecture on Proust. So the fact that in order to understand duration, you have to contract, you have to, in a certain sense, suspend the durations. You have to like solidify the flow of your thoughts, of your duration, in order to make itself relatable, in a certain sense, and to communicate these impressions you had. And of course, I think it struggles a little bit in order to understand this kind of anonymity without giving itself a name, and that is why he plunges a little bit into mysticism, or to mystical philosophy, that kind of prevents, I think, scholars, many other scholars, and to have a better glimpse of what he had in mind, also with this idea of temporal fusion, the fact of past events still have an influence on presence, like you argued before. So the fact that it's not about linearity, it's about significance. It's about how things are dense and important to us, as it is for Marcel in Proust. But this is also the fecundity of Merleau-Ponty, and the fact that it's so evocative, and it's also his fortune nowadays. And if you think of Toadvine works on the memory of the word, so the fact that, which is also deeply Bergsonian, I think is more Bergsonian than you will actually recognize. So the fact that there is an experience with a capital E, and then there are different throws, different declination of this experience, which they are all restitution of the experience with a capital E, without trying to persevere, to endure in this venture that is life, I think, in Bergson interpretations. Thank you. It was really inspiring.
Right. Any other? Jakub, do you want to follow up on that, or are you? Right. So Joel. Oh yeah, great. Okay, Joel has a question.
Thanks, Riccardo, for your presentation. In fact, I have just one question. I agree with Merleau-Ponty, if I understand him correctly, that intersubjectivity is given by the new physics, the physics of Einstein, regarding time. But what is strange for me, that for Merleau-Ponty it is also a Bergsonian idea, because it seems to me that in duration and simultaneity, Bergson defends the idea that in fact there is an objective time, independent of any observer. And I think it's a crucial point in duration and simultaneity. So two questions. I suppose that Merleau-Ponty knows this text where Bergson discusses the question of a time independent of any observer. My question is, does Merleau-Ponty think that in Bergson this idea is not very important? I mean, that we can have a Bergsonism without this idea, which could explain his conclusion that, in fact, an intersubjective time in physics is a Bergsonian view of time. I don't know if I'm clear.
Thank you. Thank you. It's really deep lecture. Yeah, I mean, I think Merleau-Ponty does not follow Bergson on that point. So the fact is, objective time and independency in a certain sense of any observer. I think he would have argued this as a realist position. So I think this also pertains to his ambiguity between the importance of defending the sheer existence of other things without the consciousness, I mean la conscience constituante, in conserving the idea of the fact that the subject in a certain sense give sense to the surrounding world. I think that's why, for instance, kind of neglects this passage, I think. There are different possibility in terms of, I mean, setting the benchmark about the stability of time, but I think they all necessitate a sort of subjective validation or intersubjective validations. I think you can retrieve a similar idea in the course note on institution and passivity. So the fact that everything that has a sense in history, everything that outlives any individual does so because it's kind of retrieved by other individuals. So in a certain sense, by other observers, if you decide to employ still a physical, let's say, vocabulary. So the fact that we keep looking at the sky in a certain sense, we keep looking at the world surrounding us, and the world still needs us in order to be meaningful in a certain sense. I don't think that Merleau-Ponty goes that deep in recognizing a sort of, like, for instance, other current phenomenologists do. For instance, I think of Timothy Morton and any other authors that, or also Dawn Ides and post-phenomenological claims today, the fact that we need new eyes, we need better eyes in order to understand the world that still makes sense without us. I mean, we just have to run it back in a certain sense. And yeah, this is sort of punctum caecum of this, of my presentation, but I think also Merleau-Ponty's reading of physics, I mean, which is of Bergsonian physics, or what Bergson thought he understood of Einstein physics in a certain sense. I think those readings are instrumental to prove their point. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions? Anyone? No, right. Right. So yeah, I think that's everything for the session. So thank you so much, Riccardo. Thank you to Hon as well. Thank you to both of our speakers.